Hello everyone, Ruby Rovell here, the Marcus Aurelius of low-budget philosophy, here to talk to you today about Sun square Saturn. Now, we associate the Sun in astrology with the heroic journey, with the quest to become ourselves, with the basic recognition that within each of us there is some individual spark, some sacred personal solar light within us that is uniquely our own. The little potential of radiant luminous possibility that has been a gift from God, which it is our mission in life to learn how to express in some kind of creative form, to feel that we have come into the world not just as a plaything of fate, as someone who is blindly governed by the tide of collective forces and the collective unconscious, but someone who has become aware of themselves, someone who has become aware of themselves as a unique character, a unique hero or heroine upon the grand stage of existence. But this is not an easy process, and in order to find our own inner light and figure out how best we can be what only we can be, we need some help along the way. But sometimes that help comes in the form of hindrances. Heroes, in order to find themselves, usually have to be challenged. They have to meet with obstacles. They have to meet with opposition. They have to meet with forces in the outside world that oppose and obstruct where they're trying to get to, but by the very process of doing that, give them a greater energetic charge which reinforces their sense of defiance and determination to achieve their own quest. If we don't have opposition and obstruction, it's very easy to drift along in a carefree and unfocused manner. But the moment the road we want to travel down is suddenly beset by ogres, or there's difficult boulders that we have to climb ago, that is the moment where we are challenged. That is the moment when our strength, our puissance, when our personal power, when our vigor, where our willingness to succeed is able to show what it's made of. In the case of Sun square Saturn, Saturn can personify to the hero either some arduous or difficult accomplishment and transition and journey that he must undergo in order to reach something that he wants, that he considers to be of the highest personal value, or it can simultaneously manifest as something that seems to be pulling us away from where we want to go. Something that is trying to lure us off track, to turn us and mold us into something that we are not. Because Saturn, in many ways, is the craftsman that helps us to become ourselves, who teaches us the hard work and labor that is necessary in order to construct a unique individuality and identity in the world. He is the blacksmith there at the forge, pounding the untempered metal of our raw base nature into something that is magnificent, something that is an individualistic masterpiece. But he can also be the thing that tries to keep us in that untempered state, who tries to pull us back into the dark collective morass that will govern us and make us do what is expected of us rather than what we feel is our true urge and calling in this world. Because Saturn represents the collective rule book, the expectation that we have a duty that we owe to the collective, whether that embody itself in our personal relationships, to our friendship groups, to our families, to the government, to the country that we come from. Whatever form it takes, Saturn is that big outer character out there who says, you owe me something. You have to do this to me. Forget about all these crazy quests or little prizes or little gewgaws or magical journeys that you think you need to go on for your own well-being. You owe me something. because I created you, and I can just as easily unmake you, because Saturn is the dark father, he is the dark crone, he is the parent who created us, but then resents his own creation because it could potentially outstrip him, and because it reminds him of all that he is not, of all that he has not achieved. Many parents, even if they want to encourage the talents and the nascent abilities of their offspring and to expect them to live their own unlived lives and potentials, will also often resent their children if they do shine or sparkle too much, because then, you know, what if they're greater than I am? Parents still have egos, and even if they're in the process of helping a child to develop their own, they still may be jealous if the child has abilities that they lacked, if the child looks capable of achievements that they are not capable of. But also, if their power comes from the interplay of the dynamic in this parent-child relationship, if the child matures to a certain point where it has outstripped the necessity for the parent to be the teacher and the caretaker, it has also outgrown its purpose. It's become useless. It no longer has something to define itself against. Some parents thrive off being in power of something that they consider to be a lower and inferior version of themselves. But what if it shows superiority? What if it outstrips the parent? This can be a tremendous threat to the ego. And we can just as easily meet that out there in the collective face of Saturn that resents anyone who looks like they might actually be getting somewhere in life, someone who actually assumes that they are special, that they have something unique that only they can give to the world, and which does need to be recognized and celebrated. Saturn can be very resentful and jealous of this, because people who have been totally consumed by Saturn, who have obeyed the great shoulds, the great thou shalts from the universe, who have not done what they've wanted, but done what was expected of them, when they see someone else on the path who is doing what they want, and not only doing what they want, but enjoying it in the process, it can fill them with loathing, with hatred, with resentment, with envy, with malice, with the desire to somehow say, no, if I'm not enjoying myself, if I'm not being myself, then why should you? You should be here in the faceless, miserable, grey cloud of the collective that is obeying a law that is devoid of the water of life or genuine human feeling. You shouldn't be out there showing your light and displaying your personal magnificence to the world. Don't you have shame? And this is very often how Saturn, when he's manifesting as a square sometimes, will try and subdue the solar light by filling it with shame, by making it feel embarrassed to become itself. Because if any of you have taken risks that have involved expressing your true individuality rather than just taking a ready-made persona from someone else, you know that being a real individual, being something that is truly eccentrically, idiosyncratically, and unmistakably you, makes you very visible to the world. When you shine with that solar light, you no longer have the comfort of just flowing along neatly with the rest of the crowd. You don't have that safety in numbers. Instead, you are alone. You know, at night, when the sun goes down and the stars come out and the realm of the deep unconsciousness is now at bay, then we can see all the stars that reflect the collective, that reflect the intermingled mass of all the beings in existence. But when the sun rises, when the sun comes into the sky, it eclipses everything else. We can no longer see the darkness. We can no longer see the stars. The rest of the Aquarian universe is blinded, and the sun is the one at center stage. And people feel the same when our sun takes the center stage. True or personal authenticity can be blinding. Can stand out. It's why great performers or great statesmen or politicians or especially charismatic people, why when they're on stage their presence seems to fill the room, because they have found something special. They have found the alchemical gold that so many people feel that they are lacking. You know, it's like if you go to a concert of a particular musician. For instance, I recently went to see Paramore, and if you looked in the crowd, you could see many people who are trying to be just like Hayley Williams, who are trying to be just like the lead singer from Paramore, who had decided that rather than having an individuality of their own, their individuality would be a reflection of that person, and in some way they could bask in their light and make it their own. Whereas to truly become yourself means to become something that has never truly been before, to find something that is unique and new and novel in the history of the cosmos. And that's a terrifying responsibility, to discover that kind of integrity and originality. And our true self sometimes don't necessarily always have to be that exciting. Not everyone is destined to be a pop star or a celebrity. For some people, you know, becoming themselves might be accepting and becoming comfortable with their rather ordinary aspirations, but there is still something unique there, some new way in which the flame of God is becoming luminous and made known to itself. And so Saturn kind of has to be that Luciferian devil, that voice of terror and fear whispering over our shoulder that says, if you do this, if you carry on in your path, if you keep trying to become yourself at the expense of the collective, yeah, you may shine, you may be brilliant, but you will be alone. Because if you allow yourself to truly be yourself, who else can you connect with? How can you relate to people if becoming yourself has perhaps meant deviating from the accepted values and normality of the rest of the world? You may become yourself, but what if becoming yourself leads to social isolation, leads to being an exile, to being a maverick, to being a madcap, to being a pariah? Are you willing to sacrifice that for the comfort of belonging with the rest of us, by wearing the same masks that we all wear, by wearing the same uniforms that we wear, by being that slave of the collective? At least you know where you stand. At least there is a definite structure and shape to your life, because everything has already been decided for you. But if you go out there on your own, you constantly have to figure things out according to your own zeal, according to your own personal mission and light. And the light of the sun is not always clear. We have those wonderful moments of self-realization where suddenly the path does become clear before us. We can see the goal in the distance to which we are moving. And in those jubilant, excited moments that usually align with Jupiter or Uranus transits, we can feel, yes, I have the power of the universe. I have the power of destiny on my side. That is where I am going. And by golly, I will get there. But during those hard Saturnian moments, it can feel like the clouds have come over our sun. The path that we once saw so clearly has instead been obstructed by deep valleys, ravines, and mountains. And in order to get to that place of final accomplishment, we have to trust our former intuition, even when that intuition has died. Even once that intuition has become benighted and beclouded, we kind of just have to remember in the memory map of our own minds that yes, there was something over there, and even though it's dark now, and even though the pack upon my back is heavy, and it's clear that there's many, many miles that I will have to pass through to get where I am going, ultimately the aim is worth it. If I can't feel that solar light perfectly and clearly, if it is somewhat compromised and wounded, it is still there. It is still there. I have to listen to it. I have to feel it pulse through the truth and integrity of my own heart. I cannot trust that faceless, uncaring, callous, resentful voice of Saturn that just makes me want to doubt ourselves. But as I said earlier in this video, sometimes that doubt, having that enemy out there, that voice of pessimism, can be the thing that inflames our own optimism, that can says, I have to live to be the antithesis of this. And I think particularly as this is Saturn in Pisces that we are talking about, Saturn in Pisces at its worst does have a sense of complete hopelessness, a sense of nihilism, because Pisces involves so much personal sacrifice and surrender and loss of personal control. The part of us that says, I have no clear aim or purpose, I'm just going to permit myself to drift freely on an ocean which will just toss me wherever it wants to. Saturn in Pisces can end up being cowed by that. It can feel like whatever I try to build in this world, the waters of Pisces will just wash it away. Everything is futile. Everything is purposeless. Why bother? And so sometimes when the Sun is travelling along and then he comes to this square and junction with Saturn in Pisces, he can meet this figure who is just the personification of world weariness and melancholy, who looks at the Sun and says, yeah, I was like you once, youthful, beautiful, ambitious, full of hopes and dreams. But let me tell you, it's all a waste of time. You're never going to get there. You can keep on trying, but the universe will carry on punishing you for the hubris of trying to become yourself. And then you will become jaded, worn out, and cynical, like me. And here we see the mournful face of the Fisher King, who lives in the shadow of his own ruins, who is perpetually haunted by the memory of all that he has lost and has had to sacrifice, to the point where he can see nothing beautiful in the future. He can see no hope, he can see no light. He can only see the ashes and the strange iridescent oil-stained oil spill of the oceans in which he moves, the fragments of his dreams all reflected and refracted through those strange waters. And being so consumed by that, he can't see beyond them. But he has taken that for the ultimate reality. He has taken that for the ultimate truth. And he sees anyone who is trying to aspire to go beyond that as being foolhardy and naive, and someone who has not come to terms with the harsh existential realities of what it is to live, knowing that everything that we work for will one day be consumed by that ocean and taken away from us. And there are many moments in heroic narratives like this where the hero meets someone who in many ways reflects their own personal fears and insecurities and sense of inferiority back to them. Because if the Sun is the luminous knowledge that we have something great in ourselves, and Saturn is the shadow of us, Saturn is the horrifying fear of what happens if we try and we do not become. What if, like Phaeton, the Apollo, as the son of Apollo, who asks his father to let him ride the chariot of the sun through the sphere of the zodiac in one day. We fail. We try to ride the horses of our sun. We try to ascend to those brilliant solar noonday heights. And just as it seems we're going somewhere, we find that we have peaked too soon, or that we are not as in control of our destiny as we like, and we fall back to the earth and get hurt so badly we don't feel like trying again. And for many people, that fear of trying and failing forevermore, and being forever bound by the cruelty and the dark carapace of their own limitations, is enough to prevent them from striving or for making that endeavour. And particularly when we meet people who seem to us to be the embodiments of our own failures, who seem to be the losers that we are afraid we could become, then sometimes that can put us off. We can think, yeah, I could end up like this person, and maybe it would be best just to cut my losses now and submit to the solace and the safety of pessimism, because Pessimism ultimately tries to keep us safe by saying if you don't aim high, you won't fall. You just get steady, smooth, even misery, which many times is easier to deal with. Depression, and I think Saturn in Pisces can definitely symbolize this. Depression, when we become attached to our own misery, can become a comfort blanket. Because if we've decided that the world is already going to defeat us, that we're going to lose whatever we do, we have forsaken our own self-responsibility. We have forsaken the mission that the universe has given us to become ourselves. We've been given the game and we're saying, well, the game's rigged, so I'm not going to play. So it's a lovely loophole to prevent us from taking any action. And yet just as easily, the sun can see the kind of the fallen hero that went before, represented by this Saturn, the pessimist, who tries to talk us out of our quest, and can feel defiance. He can see that Saturn in Pisces and says, well, I'm not going to be a loser like you. I'm just going to try harder. I'm not going to give up. I will succeed. I will keep trying. And no matter how many times that merciless ocean keeps, leading me forward and then leading me back, like Odysseus on his long travel home back to Ithaca, however long it takes, like Odysseus, I will remain fixed on my goal and refuse to give up. And this may have been the intention of Saturn in Pisces all along, to be the obstacle that makes the quest, to be the shadow that gives our light more definition. On a practical, mundane level, sometimes this aspect can align with times when we have a lot of hard work and a lot of responsibilities and a lot of personal burdens on our plate that we have to manage, and which at times feel like they could threaten to totally weigh us down, to subdue us and consume us, and where we feel that our own personal desires, the things that bring us joy, that make us feel like we are truly ourselves, has to be subdued and has to be dimmed a bit so that we can get through the other side. It can feel like the difficult crossing over a rocky mountain where we know that for a few weeks or so we just have to solidly and totally get our head down, and that the self-discipline and the restraint and the personal restriction and prudence that we exercise during that time, even if it feels like it's subduing and squeezing our solar light and crushing it into a box, can, on the other end, mean that we have more self-control over what we do later choose to create or make our own. Just as a musician has to go through many long hours of just training their body in order to physically be able to technically reproduce all the myriad amazing pieces of music that they hear in their mind, Saturn makes us do the same. It says, okay, you want to be a knight? Well, you got to train. You want to lose weight? Well, fine, you got to go for a jog every morning, You want to be a ballerina? Then fine, join a ballet school, learn the basics and struggle. None of these things happen by themselves. There might be that seed of light, but Saturn the craftsman is the thing that develops that light into something purposeful, that we have the maturity to figure out how to be the midwife of it. And it makes me think of a very crucial moment in the legend of Parsifal, where for a good portion of the first part of the quest, he decides he wants to be a knight, he decides he wants to be a member of King Arthur's court, but he's also a blundering imbecile and knows nothing about the world. And all of his first early victories and accomplishments and mistakes are all just a consequence of his pure blind will and strength that has not yet been tamed or disciplined. And he makes an idiot of himself along the way, but he's a strong idiot, so he kind of gets away with it up to a certain point. But eventually he meets one of the more positive displays of Saturn as the wise old teacher who, having had a life of experience, now feels it is their responsibility to transmit that experience to someone younger than themselves who would benefit from it. And up to that point, he doesn't know the basics of being a knight. He doesn't know how to saddle his horse properly. He doesn't know how to wear the armor or chainmail. He doesn't know proper knightly etiquette or the code of chivalry. And for all of the first part of the story, he's been so egotistical and arrogant that anytime anyone's tried to teach him, he's just refused to listen because of the bad information that was transmitted to him early on his quest by those who wanted to sabotage him. But eventually, he reaches this point of maturity where he finds someone who he trusts, who does seem wise, who does seem kind and benevolent, and who is patient with some of his recklessness. And he begins, there is more to being a knight, there is more to being a hero than a braggadocio, than sheer braggadocio. There is technique, skill, self-mastery, discipline, and collective responsibility involved. It's not just about blundering into a fight and beating the other guy to a bloody pulp. There is a deeper meaning and philosophy and purpose to it, which involves not just thinking about yourself, but thinking about the collective to which you belong. And in that square, we have that uneasy balance of trying to align the duty that we feel to becoming ourselves with the duty that we genuinely do owe to the outer world. And squaring that particular circle is not always an easy business. Anyway, that's enough waffling about the hero's journey. If you need some advice from a wise old woman about your own heroic journey, then please come to me. My email address is thestarsunraveled@outlook.com. You can follow me on Instagram at astrologyandunderwear, and you can support me on Patreon so that I can afford to buy my own chainmail at www.patreon.com/thestarsunraveled. And, well, I have nothing more to say. Bye.